get going. This is Two Homers and a Realist. We are doing the Baylor postgame. The sadness has set in. Reality has set in.
The pain is real.
The pain is real. I'm Steve.
I'm Lucas.
I'm Connor.
Jay.
We were all at the game.
Yep.
We were all there.
Yep.
Unfortunately,
For every second of it.
Unfortunately,
All
we
game.
don't miss games.
Even the extra 10
Yep.
minutes that we didn't need to be sitting there.
I actually enjoyed the stadium. It was nice. I'd
stadium's
never
great.
been.
Yeah.
The stadium's great. I crowned it on my text to people by far the best stadium in the Big 12. I haven't been to Texas, so that's not fair. I haven't been to West Virginia, but I'll go out on a limb and say it's better
If
than
you ever
that.
go to a
It
Texas
is
game,
clearly better.
would you sit in the fallopian tube in the end zone?
I would not.
Okay.
On many levels, because I don't sit in end zone seats
Oh.
by choice.
Okay.
I would, just that's what I said. Never mind. Family pod. Family
Sort
pod.
of. I don't know. Not after what we've seen. But it was a great stadium. I would say that they saved their obnoxiousness and their grotesque behavior for after the game, whereas last time in 2019 they shared all that with us at the start of the game
Yep.
with the prayer that had a slight against OU in it, and then the showing the Sooner Schooner turning over, which I wasn't that offended by that at all, but the prayer part was bad. They didn't do that this year, but then at the end of the game, we'll get into that and how they behave. But the Sooners lose, the Sooners go down, they're 9-1. Final score was 24-14. Oh, wait. No, it was 27-14,
Right.
and we'll get into that. But let's start us off just by going around the group and say, who is and how much are you pessimistic now following the loss?
Want me to start?
Start us off.
I don't know. I felt pretty good after Texas Tech. Maybe we had turned a corner.
We all did.
2 weeks to prepare, and then we came out looking like that's extremely disappointing. I'll have to go with pessimistic just because it was just that poor of a performance offensively. Defensively, I actually give us credit. I was saying yesterday, an elite defense keeps them to 10 points the rest of the game and keeps your team that's struggling offensively in it. A good defense, which I felt we had yesterday, held on into the fourth quarter. But when your offense is just stalling and not productive,
And you're on the field.
it just
all
seems
the
to happen.
time.
Your defense either wears out or loses a little bit of its steam. They must feel like, man, the offense isn't going to get it done.
And you're losing the field position game.
Yeah.
Except for when we have turnovers.
So
I mean, we actually took the ball away.
the defense, the stats aren't going to look like it, but the defense did play well enough yesterday for us to win that game, no question.
Right.
Because you hold them to 10 points by the fourth quarter, we should have had, if it's 27-10 heading into the fourth, it's a whole different game. So, but yeah, offensively it was just ineptitude everywhere. Whether it's
Yeah.
play calling, play scheme,
Yep.
individual players,
Execution.
efforts, I don't know, the whole ball
Everything
wax.
seemed wrong. It was a game where there were just, in every aspect of offense, out of sync, no urgency. I felt like at the very start of the game they made the right decision in accepting the ball after winning the coin toss.
Yeah.
And I think they would have been well suited to kick on sides if they had either deferred or not won the coin toss and were not getting the ball. They get the ball and they run 3 running plays that just clearly seem out of sorts.
Blown up, too.
Blown up.
Like, blown up plays.
So I give them a break on, okay, they had a game plan and Baylor adapted. My guess is Baylor came in and their coach's name,
Aranda.
He came in with a good scheme to change something up, I think. I think they saw something on film thinking that they could run a draw because second down was a draw play that just got blown up. And my guess is it looked like to me their defensive formation was splitting out and making it look like the middle of the field was open and then swallowing that up every time. And that took away the draw play. I don't fault them for doing it on second down on the first drive. I fault them for trying to go back to it 3 or 4 times during the game when it wasn't there and not adjusting. I'm pretty pessimistic. I don't know how you can't be from everything that you saw. I think that we could win or lose the next 2 games with maybe 50-50 or might be we might actually maybe 60% likely to beat Iowa State, but maybe 40% likely to beat Oklahoma State at this point. So that's not good. Connor, what are your thoughts?
Excuse me. Coming from an optimist, I'm very pessimistic. I'm everything you guys have just said. Like, watching that offense not be what we have been spoiled with, and just to a massive extent. The out of sync, like you said, and I know we've said it, I know I've said it on past pods, there's just no identity that we can consistently establish. Every time we think we've found ourselves and who we are as a team, we completely lay an egg. And the inconsistency, I think that's what's just so frustrating. It's just a level of inconsistency. Yeah, and because we're not used to these on again, off again games. Like it's one game usually in the year that we clearly underperform that game, and it's usually a game we get beat. We've just been lucky enough this year to underperform in multiple games and win them.
Be good enough to win.
Yeah. So, that speaks to some positivity as well, to find that extra gear to get across the finish line in games like that. But, like everyone said, like, it finally caught up to us. And I think
against our best opponent.
Yeah.
Not surprising.
Sure. Our best opponent, absolutely. But I think what's frustrating a little bit more is just, I know we've honed in on this championship November mindset, and I think I had myself hyped up for it. I had myself believing.
Everybody did.
We're coming off a bye week. We had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. And regardless of what happened in the first drive or two, we scored on the second drive, we had the ball, I think. So regardless of what happened in the first drive, we should have been able to make adjustments and been prepared to say, okay, Baylor might throw something new in here, because they've seen us. They had the tape as well. So, I don't know.
We had to score. We had to get a lead. We didn't do it in a substantial enough way. I think if we're up 14-0, or if we get up after that, give up that first touchdown, but we score again and we're up 21-0, we're even 21-14, 21-7 or 17-7, their game plan has to change. They're not going to run the ball the 90% of the time they ran the ball like they did. I don't know what the ratio was, but they only threw like 12 passes.
They only completed 12 passes.
Passes. They would have had to throw the ball more. We would have gotten them out of that game plan, but we never did get them out of that game plan.
Which I think we scored on the third drive, actually, because I think the second drive was a missed field goal. It was a missed 52-yard field goal by
another problem. Worried that he may be injured. He didn't finish the Texas Tech game. Misses 2 field goals. And
very uncharacteristic.
And had a really poor kickoff that went out of bounds, giving them good field
set the
position.
tone in the second half, for sure.
So, Lucas?
I'm extremely pessimistic. I'm angry at myself for believing that we were good enough to go down there and win this game.
You had good reason to believe.
I fell for...
You shouldn't be angry at yourself.
I'm angry for myself for not being a realist and becoming a homer on the last podcast.
So you're angry at yourself for actually being a true fan.
No, I'm angry at myself for thinking that coming out of a bye week, we would be better offensively and defensively. But I can't complain about the defense in this game because.
But what would lead you to believe we would have not been what you thought we were?
Right.
All signs pointed towards championship November. This is when we shine.
So your expectations were 100% realistic.
Yeah.
And those expectations happened to align.
If it was realistic, I would have predicted a defeat.
Not the same.
No. You're aligning realism with perfect prediction, and that's ridiculous. Okay. There's no way. Because
I think you were 100% aligned with where your feelings probably should have been, and
that doesn't change the fact that I'm mad at myself for having hope.
Exactly.
Because I've said this entire season, even before the first game of the year, I said I think we lose 1 or 2 games this season. But then on the last pod we did, I felt like coming out of this bye week, the Tech game we looked really good. Offense was clicking, defense was looking better. We got key players back on defense that I thought would be enough of a difference that we hold a team like Baylor to 20 and we score in the high 30s, low 40s. I think I predicted 45-24 because a lot of my assumption was the bye week. I thought Caleb would get more, the extra reps. He would maybe unlock some more of the playbook because obviously if you're not taking first-team reps the first 5 games of the year, you're not installing all the offense with him. But now that he's had full control of his team, I thought Lincoln would open it up a little bit more and that maybe the zone read would actually become a zone read and not just an automatic handoff. And I also thought that they would let Caleb run more, and that would be the difference in us producing points by extending drives.
Yep.
And none of those things rang true.
All all of that is realistic.
In theory, should have worked.
Every
I think
bit
what
of it
happened.
was realistic,
I think what happened yesterday
based on good evidence.
is what I feared during and after the Kansas game, and then we looked so much better against Tech,
Yeah.
combined with the off week.
Yeah.
That rerouted my pessimism into optimism.
Yeah.
And
Same.
That's actually a good compare. Like that offense looked like the first half of Kansas.
It really did.
Mhm.
Yep.
Like very,
Really
very,
did.
very similar.
The whole game.
I wonder
and
if
it-
it's.
yeah, and this time
Yeah.
it lasted an entire game.
I mean, he's young, so we can't put.
I think there's
All
a
of
lot
this
that
on there,
you
but
have to say that he
he
played
might
like
have-
a freshman.
Yeah, but he might, be really uncomfortable in these road situations. Even though Kansas doesn't have a hostile crowd, it's just, I don't know, the travel, the trip, the
There's a different-
hotels,
there's a different
the
mentality for it,
everything
for
that
sure.
goes through
There's a
it,
different mentality.
and he's just got to learn.
Well, there's a different mentality when you come into a game where you're the man, you're leading a team with a lot to lose, versus playing in an environment where there's nothing to lose, which is where he came in Texas. And honestly, he did some things that were magnificent in Texas, but a lot of that was just an athlete being an athlete. He broke big runs. First play from scrimmage for him, he breaks for a touchdown.
And that was
Wide- his wide
that's what the
receiver- his
second
wide
half of
receivers
Kansas
made
was.
Wide
50
receivers
balls.
made plays. He didn't throw brilliant. Now he threw the ball well, but he didn't throw it up in a way deep that was Baker-like and Kyler-like. He threw balls up for receivers to make plays.
To say,
They
"Go
end up
make
being
play.
very
Go
good,
make the play."
where they were in a position where his receiver had the best chance of doing it. We haven't seen that yet. We're really seeing him go into a shell, and I think it's just a freshman being a freshman, where he's looking for a guy who's clearly open. He's late making his decisions, and all of that just compounds in a bad way.
In the first half, he had so much time in the pocket.
Great time
It
in the
was
pocket.
the offensive blocking in the pass blocking in the first half.
It was remarkable.
He couldn't have had more time
Right.
on a lot of
Yeah.
on a lot of those throws, but he still waited
Until
two
there was-
steps too late to throw some of those passes
Not
because he's
throwing
reading the
people
field.
open.
And
Not
Riley
throwing
made a
people
comment that he was just not seeing things he expects him to see.
And
He
he's-
waited
and he's a true
longer
freshman.
than even waiting long.
Yeah.
Like it was
Right.
'Cause- and he had
awkwardly
the time,
long.
and he had the
Now,
time
in the
to do
pocket.
it
Can we?
too.
And I'm thinking that's mostly Caleb making mistakes, but
Just growing pains.
growing pains. Exactly.
He didn't play. He didn't have a senior year of high school either.
Exactly. But can we blame Riley a little bit for maybe continuing to put the kibosh on him running? Maybe he's restraining him from running, because if you're back there in that pocket that long, and some of those, just run forward and get 5 or 6 yards.
Yeah, he had clear openings on some of those where the pocket maybe collapsed around him a little bit after 3 or 4 seconds, which is a ton of time, that he could have ran forward and maybe. I don't remember necessarily a spy in the first half, but there might have been a linebacker lurking that he would have only got 4 or 5 yards if he doesn't make the guy miss, which you take 5 yards on a carry every time.
Every time.
There's not a situation that you're
Nope.
not happy taking 5 yards unless it's third and
Like
20.
some.
There is
yeah.
no question Lincoln has a problem with that type of play. I mean, he might not
Except
never
with
come out
Jalen
and
Hurts.
say it.
He may not even realize.
He'll never, yeah.
Except with
that's right,
Jalen
he might
Hurts,
not
he
even
didn't have any
realize.
problem because it seemed like Hurts had a one read and go mentality, and if Riley didn't like that, he would have stopped it.
I don't know, because I
Well,
don't
I
know if
think
you can tell Jalen
I
to
think that
not
too.
do that.
But I,
mean,
think,
what are you
I
gonna?
think as well, Riley's also probably more focused on Caleb's arm talent and saying, I know you can make plays, or I've seen you
Right.
make plays, or you're.
Right.
Jalen was, I'm not going to say he's a one-trick pony, because he could throw the
He
ball.
had
We saw
good.
him
Yeah,
make-
he could throw the ball.
But at the same time, I don't think it's. I think
Ask CeeDee
that
Lamb
was
about
built
that.
into the. I think that was built into the scheme and the playbook with Jalen Hurts for sure.
Well, then it should be now as well.
I agree.
Yep.
I think it should be. I think Riley
With the freshman,
shows
absolutely.
undue restraint.
2 reads max, take off.
Take off.
Max.
And just learn, if you're reading, one of the things you should read is how open the field is in front of you. And
Yeah.
just, the rest of the field will completely open up. I guarantee you, ask Kyler Murray how much the field opens up when you can run.
Yeah,
Those guys could not do some umbrella defense where everyone's deep.
because then you've got the corners looking in the backfield,
Exactly.
like the majority of that play,
Yep.
and all it takes is like one pump fake and your receiver's open, or 2 steps towards the line of scrimmage like you're going to run, and all of a sudden a linebacker comes up and then
Yep.
somebody's open
Well,
up
it's
the middle.
exactly what happened with ours. Key Lawrence and Graham were all peeking into the backfield multiple times because their quarterback kept the ball so many times.
Yeah.
This relates to 2 things. One was a listener question, and the other is a point that I'd like to make about Riley. I made this on the drive home with Connor. I think that there is some downside to him being the offensive coordinator. And I've made this point, I think, before, that he can't completely objectively evaluate the defense because it is a little awkward if he brings Grinch in and has a conversation with him as the head coach, when especially after this game. And Grinch is kind of looking at the offensive coordinator. He's not looking at the head coach and saying, well, I remember a lot of problems on the other side of the ball. Maybe you should talk to that coach. Oh, look in the mirror. It's you. But
That's an interesting take. I
There
hadn't
was
thought
times
of it
on
like
defense.
that way before.
There were times on defense when I looked at the sideline specifically, and Riley's looking at his play card
yeah,
because
Yep.
he's expecting us to get
Exactly.
the ball back, and he's
Yep.
already planning what we're going to do on the next drive.
I agree.
While the defense is on the field doing their thing.
so his ability to evaluate it in the game is tough. I think it's effective. We've talked about this, his clock management skills.
Yeah.
And I think that he also just can't see the forest for the trees. That if you were the offensive coordinator at Alabama and things aren't working, what do you think's going to happen? Nick Saban's going to come over and say, we are in the third quarter. It's not working. Change. Something has to change. You've got to make adjustments. You've got to adapt.
Stoops would
Something
do that.
has to change. Stoops
You get to
would do
manage.
that.
You get to manage.
You get to manage
the
it.
entire
And so I think
team.
that's a problem.
Yeah.
And I think
Also, too, because maybe coordinators have a feel for the game or how it's going, but if he had a coordinator that maybe wasn't quite doing even what he wanted, but it's working, you let it roll because he's got this feel
You need
for the
outside
game.
thoughts.
Right, yeah, that's just as simple as that, the outside thoughts. So you don't always say, hey, that's not working, do this. It can be the other way. Like, Lincoln might be wanting to do more, but, well, I thought we were going to throw a lot this game, but you came out here and you're actually running it really well. Just roll with it.
Do we think
run.
Kel Gundy has input? Because he's the longest tenured staff member.
Yeah.
He's been
I
through
think he's
5
the longest
offensive
coach
coordinators
in
now.
OU coaching history.
I mean, he's been through Leach,
Yeah.
Mangino, Wilson,
Long.
Heupel, Long, and now Riley.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he has the ability to say, hey, we need to run the ball more because it was working in the first half, and now you've completely gone away with it with throwing the ball?
I don't think he
all
could
the
do it
time.
in a game.
Yeah.
I think he might be able. You got to work your way into that position where
So
you can make
inputs
that
and
suggestion.
film
The best you could do is at halftime
Yeah.
make that observation.
I mean, he's wearing a headset.
I know.
Kel
think-
Gundy's
Yeah,
up-
see, I feel that's
I
too
just
weak.
don't
Kel
feel like
Gundy's
they're
up in a
gonna talk to
box.
him.
I think that Riley would leave the team before giving up offensive play calling duties.
That's
What if
Probably true.
he brought his brother in,
I
who's
like that
proven
idea.
he can be a good offensive coordinator because SMU is completely
That
turned
may
around.
be that's an interesting caveat for sure, and it's
Would
a
it
lot
be a
less,
bad dynamic because we had the Bob and Mike situation?
It could be,
But-
but it could be fine. Bob and Mike worked really well
Yeah.
when,
for a long
when
time.
We won,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, what I would
And as a caveat to that, with it being your brother, there's also this added feedback
yeah,
that's
That's
more than
right.
professional.
He's not scared
right?
of his brother.
Right.
or vice
Yeah,
versa. Like,
right.
like I can talk a little bit more straight to you.
Right.
I know you're my boss.
Yeah.
I know you're the head coach, but we're also
Here's what's
blood.
happening.
And
Here's
I'm
what's going
telling
on.
you
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now, you're not seeing what's going on. Let me do what I
Yep.
need to
He
do.
can level with him and
He
be
can
like,
level
hey,
with him.
stop doing that.
I think
we
there's
need
a
to start
true
doing
advantage
this.
to that. I agree, and I don't know what Lincoln Riley's offensive strengths really are. I know they exist, but I don't know enough to pinpoint it. I would suspect it doesn't happen in the game. I think it's in long-term development and design and strategy, which you do not on Saturday.
Well, Lucas and I
So-
talked about this driving home yesterday. Lincoln's kind of MO is his play design and scheming people
Exactly what I'm
open,
saying. Yep.
and there hasn't been a lot of that this year.
This year has been the worst of it.
It's just
insane.
kind of
It's
we're just
insane.
running
But
plays.
it's
He didn't just
Yep.
lose it overnight, though.
Right.
I mean, this was the guy that's probably the best play
Well, this
caller
gets
of the
to
last
my-
7 or 8 years.
This gets to a thought I have.
So
back
what's
to
changed?
That listener question, which was actually in reference more directly to the father of is McCutcheon?
McCutcheon.
Yeah. His comment, it's just on defense, but the listener question is basically, what's with these practice day all-stars playing? What do we do to change that? Is there a coach we need to get rid of so that we can? And I think he said specifically, can we help him pack to stop rewarding the practice day all-stars? And so what I want to relate it back to with this Lincoln question is, are we looking at what works in practice with Caleb, with different players in different positions, with the scheme, and then not realizing it's not translating into the game? And we've got to make a change. He's got to make a change offensively, across the board, every aspect of the game, but offensively, to understand that what is working in practice, schematically, whatever, is just not working in game time situation. And so abandon that, change it, make it work, make it simpler. I don't know.
I think simplification is key. I think Riley complicates it to a level where it's like he sees it and you could reference past experiences with, you have two of the best college football quarterbacks ever, and then you have Jalen Hurts, who is a smart football player, who can come in, learn your offense, understand exactly what you're trying to do. You're not used to working with some of these other guys, and I'm not saying that Caleb and Spencer aren't, smart offensive or quarterback minds, but at the same time, it's different people. People are different.
They are different, and
So-
and Spencer is sort of a bridge between these two extremes. But if you look at what we remember about Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, we remember seniors, or a junior and a senior. And so Baker's junior year and senior year were magnificent. But he did start out with a loss in the early part of the 2017 season to Iowa State. And of course, all of them had losses early on. But you had a senior in a very experienced senior in Jalen Hurts. You had an extremely experienced junior in Kyler Murray. You had, obviously, a very experienced Baker Mayfield as a junior and a senior. So did he come
His
as
sophomore
a
year was a struggle.
It was a struggle. I mean, it was pluses and minuses. We loved what we saw out of him, but we saw a lot of what we see out of Caleb
Tennessee
Williams.
it's a good parallel, actually.
Yeah.
So we won that game in Knoxville, but
Yeah.
it's a great
That was a
parallel
coming
to
of-
how they played.
He hit a new plateau in
Yeah.
it, but he still had problems. We go into the next year in 2016, and we mess up defensively a lot, but we lose to Houston. But we definitely saw Baker Mayfield try to play hero ball against Ohio State, and that was what was a real weakness in losing that game.
Big turning point in his
Big
career.
turning point in his career, and,
Yeah.
he understood what they had to do. And so we're going to see that turning point in Caleb, but it could be that Riley is not recognizing the fact that it's tough in a game-time situation, and his expectations, and I'm sure he can see it and say, I know you can do this, kid. And the truth is, he can't do it now in a game. Do you either stick with it and keep on that long-term game plan, or do you simplify and win games today? I think you can develop in the off-season enough. I'm sure what Riley's thinking is more different than mine, that he's thinking, no, I need to get a constant progression going because, yeah, maybe I can simplify and beat Baylor, but that simplification is not going to allow the development I need in season, because if I get into the playoff and I'm facing Georgia, that simplified stuff, gimmicky stuff, is not going to work against Georgia, which I could debate whether or not that's actually even true.
Yeah.
But
But from where you sit, and if you're Riley, that might be a mindset.
That might be the mindset.
I like the simplification, though. Like, up to this point, like I said, we've been by the skin of our teeth winning games. If simplifying it means, God, I mean, we were watching the Georgia game on the way home, and the simplification that the Georgia offense has,
Yeah.
and just the little dump plays that they run, the easy routes that
not
you're
a great
getting.
offense.
No, I mean,
We were all
you're
wanting
setting them
that
up for success
in the first quarter after we went 3 and out with the runs, and then Caleb throws that interception. We were thinking he hasn't completed a pass yet. Let's just throw a running back screen,
Get his
or a
confidence
swing
up.
pass, or
Yeah.
a quick slant. If the quick slant goes for 5 yards, it goes for 5 yards.
And
You're
disrupt
winning the
the
down.
defense.
Get him in a
Show
little bit of rhythm.
winning the down. That's
Instead of
exactly
just
right.
throwing these deep balls and then expecting the running game to move up. Another thing I feel like we're lacking this year is we don't have a fast running back.
No.
Gray is quick, but he's not fast.
Yep.
Brooks takes a
is-
minute to get going.
He's not quick or fast. He's just good.
Brooks can be fast once he gets the second level.
But he's not going to break away.
He can run away from corners, but nobody goes edge to edge
Yeah.
fast. We don't have. Does Marcus Major, is he fast enough to?
So we don't have quick, and we don't.
Baylor proved
We don't have
that
fast.
that stretch play that they kept running, and then
Yeah.
the running back would cut back. We had probably 4 times that we had him in the backfield, and he stopped and reversed field
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and went the opposite direction. We don't have a back.
We
that
do
can
not have
do
a
that.
back would even think about
Right.
doing it.
Yeah.
And not that I necessarily want that happening all the time.
Sure.
But we should be able to run a stretch play where everybody's moving to one side, and then the running back can see one little cut
And make it.
and hit that cut, and then it's 10 to 15 to maybe 75 yards like the Baylor guy did.
Yeah. I wonder if. I don't know enough about football and coaching.
I don't
but
think we have great team speed right
I-
now.
Oh, I don't think we have tremendous team speed
No.
either. So I'll make 2 points about that. One is, I think in the bigger scheme sense, they probably have like a menu of plays that they start with that Riley could call 1,000 different plays. Well, he's only going to select about 150 to work on in practice that week. And if that 150 is poorly selected, they may be in trouble.
You
Now,
think
when
they
you've
work
got
on that
an
many? I don't think they work on that many plays.
Well, it may not be that many.
I bet it's 50.
I do too.
So
and
it's
you can
even
run
more-
some of
well,
them twice.
Don't get wrapped up in the number.
Right.
Yeah.
Just get wrapped up in the fact that it's a select group, and he has to guess right.
But we all thought coming off a bye week, those plays would be perfected.
Well, maybe they were in practice, and Baylor did something different. When you've got Baker Mayfield again, going back to that, and an offense like we had in 2017, you can say, hey, remember those plays we ran 3 games ago? And they're all, yes, we do. Run those plays now, and they do it really well.
Yeah.
This team can't do that. The other thing about breakaway speed, and this may be more a factor of we just are not super effective in running the ball, short plays, blah, blah, blah. But we don't seem to break free into deep vertical routes. There's been some overthrows and misthrows, but there's not a lot where you say, God, that guy was wide open. God, that guy was wide open.
Mims is the only one that gets a couple yards of separation.
And maybe it's some of that's just Caleb waiting too long to throw, but then again, just keep running. Just keep going. So,
Yeah, we're
so I don't
severely
know.
missing any type of yak
Uh-huh.
from receivers whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's basically we either catch it and get tackled or we don't catch it.
And is your best yak opportunity being a guy that's not targeted much in Hazelwood?
I
That's
he's
probably
bigger than
Mario
Mims.
Williams.
yeah, that's I was preaching about
Mario.
Mario. Yes, but
Did he
again,
play in the
Well,
first
Mario
half at
wouldn't
all?
be as much yak as it would be, well, yards after catch.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
thinking
he's-
I'm thinking you're saying yards after contact.
No.
I'm saying
Yeah.
I think both though. I think yards
Because
after
he's so
catch and
slippery
yards
and
after
fast.
contact. Like, I think a lot of that boils back down to the fact we aren't hit. I said it yesterday during the game. We are not hitting receivers in their routes.
Yep.
We're not hitting them in stride to where
Mhm.
they have
No leads.
something. We have nothing where they have something in front of them where they're catching the ball
Because
and
if
running.
Oklahoma
Or
State
it's
had
late.
Mario Williams,
Or it's late.
they would
yeah.
abuse everyone they play because they throw him the ball. And I'm not saying we need to throw him the ball or anybody the ball this much, but they throw the ball to him 15 times a game, and you'd be scared to death about that speed every time. So the late throws.
Hollywood
are-
Brown is the perfect example.
Hollywood Brown's a great example.
Slants are not always the answer, and I know we keep saying slants, but like if you have to run something as
Let's
simple
try
as
a
a
few.
slant, exactly, do it well. And I know I
Prove
did see
me
multiple
wrong.
times yesterday where we did have guys running across the middle of the field, and Caleb just was not throwing them the ball. So I'm not sure what there was there, what he sees, but you have to say, look, if I have Mario or Mims on a slant and I can hit him in stride, let him make a play. You're getting a couple
Yeah.
yards at least.
Those are the only two that can take one of those. Well, Woods is he's pretty fast for how big he is.
Well, even Stoops, like Stoops finds space. I mean,
Yeah.
Stoops can get
He
yards.
sits down in his zone like nobody's business on a 3rd and 7. He knows where to go every
yeah, but he's
time.
not. He doesn't
He's not a
get.
burner.
He's not going to get more than 10, 15 more yards. After
What about the
catch.
pass?
But he'll catch
Shoot,
the ball.
I'll
he'll
take
catch
10
the,
and
he'll
15.
Well,
catch
yeah,
the
I
ball.
understand that, but I'm saying he's not going to turn
No,
a
of
10-yard
course not.
pass into a 60-yard
Of course
touchdown.
What about when Rattler came in and we ran just the out routes to Mike Woods? They did that twice, and
And
he
then they
got
stopped.
he got 8 or 10 yards both times he did it.
Yep.
And
And
then
he stopped.
why do we not do that at all in the first half? Is Caleb not as comfortable throwing it out? Are they
Why
afraid it's going
don't
to be a
we
pick six?
do anything over and over and over? How many times as a fan, do you look down and you're pulling your hair out, stomping your feet because it's that guy next to me, whoever that was, kept screaming, "It's the same play. It's the same play."
Yeah.
On that cutback, and
Boy,
Why don't
Baylor
we-
kept doing what was working.
they all do. Why
Yeah.
don't we? Why don't we seem to ever do what's working? It's
arrogance.
almost like there's an
It's
arrogance
arrogance.
of I don't have to.
I'm better than you.
and
I
don't
can run
want to."
all these plays.
Exactly. I can run.
I
all
don't
my
know if
plays.
it's. I think he just wants
I
the
think he
defense
overthinks
to,
it.
to stay on their toes,
I know.
and he thinks he's.
or back on their heels.
He
and
thinks
yeah.
he's better than
he
everyone.
thinks he's better than
No, I
everyone.
don't think he
That's
thinks he's
arrogance.
better than everyone. I think he's just wanting
He's
to
trying to outsmart himself.
really
I think he
outsmart
outsmarts
the
him,
defense.
But he outsmarts himself.
But he
and doing
outsmarts
it.
himself.
Overthinks this stuff.
Yeah. that's a
Also,
good way to put it.
we ran against Tech. We ran a pump fake.
Yeah.
That's the only time I remember the whole season. I remember, and
Yeah.
Caleb just did the shoulder shrug.
Yeah.
In the corner bit, and then he threw to a wide open guy down the sideline
Uh-huh.
in the Tech game.
Not to go back to glory days,
Yeah,
but do
we
you
don't have to do
remember
that
how
every time.
often Josh Heupel used to use that? And it was the most exaggerated motion, and my God, would that work?
People fall for it.
He would make because
Especially
you
if
have
don't
to
do
fall
it.
for it.
Especially
Baker,
right now, if
Baker
you've
was
never
the
done
best
it.
at the
Baker
little
was
shrug.
really
Oh,
damn
yeah,
good.
Baker
And he would
was so
throw
good.
guys open just with the shrug.
Oh, absolutely. He would.
Like the
You're
Mark
so
Andrews
right,
against
throw 'em
Texas.
Open. He would. He would. That's a great thing that we're not.
And I'm
gonna
not
throw
saying
them
do
open.
it 7 times a game, but it
No.
wouldn't kill you to do it 3 times a game.
Yeah.
People wonder why I get drunk at these
Because
games.
when you throw like that Mike Woods, when they
Get
did the
riled
out
up.
route, they threw it to him, he got 8 yards. You do that 2 or 3 times in the first half, and then the second half you go back to it, but you pump fake it, and it's a out and up,
Mm-hmm.
and you throw it in between the corner and the safety. and then Mike Woods catches it and makes one guy miss, and it's a 60-yard touchdown.
Yeah,
You
I
have
can see
so
all
many
of these
weapons.
options.
You have so many weapons.
Is that a
Except the running
problem?
back.
Do we have too many weapons?
Honestly, I could preach
So you
about
don't
that
know what
all
to
day.
do?
I mean, it's
I'm not.
like
It's
I said
a
yesterday.
great problem to have, but
We've
man,
had units in the past, and we've had units. It's like, hey, we know these are our dudes. Like we have these three or four wide receivers. You're gonna see them on 4 out of every 5 plays.
Yeah, you did
with
not.
1 or 2 rotations.
You did
maybe.
not take Lamb, Hollywood, and Mark Andrews off the field.
I have another question. We threw the pass to Hazelwood. He goes up, catches it between 2 guys. It was a perfect throw. He comes down and lands. All the guys fall off to the side. He takes off running. The guy gets him from behind, totally fine. He goes down at the 1 yard line,
2.
something like that. And what did we do? We substitute.
Yep.
We're time
Rotated
It's
everyone
4.5
off the
minutes
field.
left in the game. We're trying to
Again.
score
Yep.
as fast as we can.
Yep.
And we substitute. So then Baylor gets a substitute. So you lose 30 seconds for
Yep.
no reason.
I agree.
When all you have to do is run up the line of
Line up
scrimmage,
and run a play.
snap the ball, hand it off, and punch it in from 1 yard.
Yeah, or dive.
Why
Yeah,
are we
just
substituting?
dive
just
in.
dive. I agree. I think so. Boy, I'm going to relate all these points back together. Getting back to the idea that we have too much talent and they want to use it all, too many weapons. It's like they think we got to get fresh. We got to get fresh, and I'm a big supporter of fresh, but not when you're breaking your rhythm. We're watching the Georgia game, and we're thinking Josh Heupel is having a lot of success with Tennessee, an undermanned football team against Georgia by all stretch. And he is using tempo to disrupt them, and he's having success. I'm not saying we need to run that kind of tempo, but some tempo at some points works. We didn't have urgency. We mentioned that earlier, and it works right hand in hand with urgency when you need it. That tempo is going to throw the other team off, and you don't have to be the most creative plays in the world. It can just be, and let them guess right every once in a while, that we're going to sweep to the right, and sure enough, they knew we were going to sweep to the right. Just be a little bit unpredictable, or hard to predict, and you're going to have some success with tempo, and you definitely maintain the clock, and you don't have that problem of the clock just eating away. They get to substitute in, and they get to say and look at your offense and decide what they're going to do. I think all of those are good critical points against what we're seeing in terms of coaching. This season has to be, at 9-1, sadly, has to be looked at as a coaching failure. And I give them a pass that they're a young team in many respects. They're definitely not where they think they're going to be on defense. They're a young team on offense, and they will be better. Good things are going to happen with this entire team in future years. But they led us to believe they were going to be good. They definitely made us think that, I'm not cutting that out, that's pretty good, that we had a lot of reason for optimism leading into the season. I was going to chart your optimism, pessimism.
Yeah.
And I think I could chart it where I could see like preseason, Tulane, and then a spike here when we get to
Tech is our only
Tech,
spike.
and
Well,
then it falls back
TCU, I was
down.
starting to come back
Right,
up.
yeah, starting to come.
And then had a
yeah,
spike
yeah.
during Tech.
And I think all of that's
And now it's
where
completely
everyone
gone.
is. That's where everyone is to different degrees, with different swings. But they led us to believe we had a lot, and maybe we're seeing it in practice. And now reality is a different thing, and it's unfortunate and frustrating as a fan. I'm sure it's frustrating for them. Let's transition real quickly. Let's talk about how good the officiating was, because we've been talking about the stellar Big 12 officiating all season, off and on, and I think we saw something that was just a step above everything we've seen up to this point in yesterday's game. Who wants to address some of the officiating issues that we had?
What is there to say? I mean, there is an agenda against OU.
That's the debate I want to have.
I'll just say it, and that's fine. Like, all you people listening, all you hundreds of listeners, there is a...
It's up to thousands now, but go ahead.
You're right, sorry. Yeah, hundreds was like game 2. If there's not some sort of, even if it's a subconscious bias of these officials, which I think there could be a very conscious bias of the officials, and even calls made before the game I mean, it's that bad. It is that bad. When you miss a pass
in
interference
particular,
where a
the
dude
pass
is hanging on our guy, literally preventing one of his arms
And
from
he falls
going
to the
up
ground.
and catching the
He's
ball.
falling to the ground before the ball is there. And it's not hand fighting. It's all one, because the guy's completely behind him on his back.
Yeah, he grabbed his right arm and pulled it to the ground and went to the ground as our guy's trying to pull the ball in.
So I would say that was the second most egregious call of the game. That was the most pivotal one. That one changed the game. That one eliminated or greatly reduced our chances of success. When you look at the transition, the comparison of what it would have been like had we gotten the call that we deserved.
That was in the
10-7.
That was in the third quarter.
Exactly. It's 10-7. It's in the third quarter, and we're on the move on a drive that will go 3 and out after that missed call. 2 more plays and we're done.
What was the most egregious?
The most egregious was, unless I am just ignorant of the rules, why in the hell there wasn't a 15-yard penalty when 5,000 people, literally plus 5,000 people, are on the field at the end of that game.
It doesn't change the outcome other than
Doesn't change the outcome
the
at
3
all.
points that puts the field goal out longer. So
Right.
maybe they missed the field
Right.
goal. But
how do you not call that?
Yeah.
We've seen it time and again with OU getting called for the Schooner in 1984. We saw it when the Schooner turns over. If you'll notice, there's 2 things they do. There's when the Schooner's turned over and when the Schooner puts ruts in the field. The first thing they do when it turns over is make sure no one's hurt. The second thing they do is they freak out and get everything off the field as fast as they can.
Yeah.
Because they know if it's on the field, once that timeout, they come back from timeout, they're going to
get a
penalize
flag.
you.
Yeah, delay of game.
And they'll be out there working dirt in when the ruts are in the field, when they run it when it's too soft.
I mean, we had the ADs on the field talking to each other.
It had to be a
During
penalty.
that, and
Joe
then how do they
Castiglione
make
should
it a
have
penalty?
fought. I would have loved to see that fedora come flying off.
I'm sure
and
he had
hands
someone in the
throat.
family make a hit today.
You're right.
I'm sure.
Well, what's
someone's
interesting too is we obviously don't know how it'll play out, but imagine if those 3 points are the tiebreaker
dead. Oh boy,
that puts them in.
could be over us.
Exactly.
So I look at it, I think Riley is not being hyperbolic. I think he's absolutely accurate when he says it's a safety issue. It's the first thing he said in his post-game interview when they asked him about it. And it's true. So in baseball, we have the code, which I changed my mind on the code years ago.
the unwritten rules of baseball.
The unwritten rules of baseball.
Which I'm a baseball traditionalist,
Mhm.
so I believe in all
So
those
you're
things.
very positive
Yes.
code. So I used to be against the code as a naive person who just thought it encouraged bad behavior. And the code exists very much in hockey and very much in professional, in all of baseball. And it was listening to Mike Munger on Econ Talk that completely changed my mind on this to understand that is a real important subtlety in law, that you want things that are unwritten rules, because if you try to codify everything in rules, it's going to break down and not work. Should we, like if you're in baseball and you did something equivalent to the bad behavior we saw by Baylor in trying to kick that field goal, electing to kick the field goal at the end of the game, etc. In baseball, you do something equivalent to that, you're getting your ass thrown out the
Yep.
next game,
The
for
next-
sure.
yeah.
If you're in hockey, the guy who's designated as the fighter is going to come after your guy who's designated as the fighter.
Yep.
It's going to happen.
Or he's going to go after your best player and knock him out.
Or your best player, but usually it's a
It's goon for
organized
goon.
goon for goon.
Right.
So the question is, there's also human emotion. And so we bring 11 guys back out of the locker room to go and be on the field as gentlemen for them to kick that kick on us. It is not out of the realm of logical opportunity to think that somebody is going to get it in their head to enforce a code.
Yep. Take
And
out the kicker.
Take out the kicker.
Yep.
And maybe not to hurt him necessarily, like in a permanent way, not break a leg,
Send a
but
message.
really hurt the guy.
Yeah.
Send a message. Which, how do we think that? Let's play that out in our minds and think what comes next. A brawl.
Yep.
And it's an uneven brawl because
Yeah.
Baylor's entire team's on the field. And
Right.
we got 11 guys.
Yeah.
The rest are in the locker room. They're going to hear about it and they're going to come out. What
Not-
about the
not to mention
5,000
all the fans.
5,000
Yeah.
students that
Yeah.
are sitting right there on the sidelines, ready to run out onto the field again? And we knew after it was over, that was going to be emotional for our players. And as they're walking off, and Riley said he saw Aguebu got like 3 guys just bum
Yeah.
rushed him.
That was during the
original one?
The original.
So
Before.
even
Yeah.
more reason to
But
believe
then
there's something
after
that could
I
happen.
saw, I'm trying to think of who it was.
Brian Mead ran into a guy that came around another person that it was did not look intentional, but it looked like that guy got popped pretty hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's safety to everyone. It's safety all around. I was fired up. 200, 300 people in the Baylor stands heard my opinion on the
Yeah.
whole thing, and I wasn't holding. I kind of held back, but I wasn't completely holding back. It was Bush League awful.
I mean, I felt like Callahan kicking a field goal to avoid a shutout. It felt like Gus Malzahn calling 3 timeouts inside the 10-yard line.
But it's worse than all that
for a
because
field
they were
goal
winning
against Auburn.
It's worse
I mean,
than all of
for
that
Auburn.
because they were winning. And one of the
Exactly.
two of you pointed out if we're going to believe this story about it's for the tiebreaker, then why the hell weren't you trying to get the touchdown
exactly.
at the end of the game?
Getting
Why were
6
you
points.
why were you kneeling
You took
the
2
ball
knees.
And they took 3 points off the
off
scoreboard.
the board?
Yeah,
Exactly.
because
now,
of
you could
the-
argue
this-
in both cases OU has a chance, and we're going to make it where OU doesn't have a chance still.
That's the first time I've ever seen the roughing the snapper call, which I guess it's a legitimate call. I mean, it's a rule.
Yeah.
But do you really need to call that?
But back to the officiating, that's a real big question.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I don't know. I tend to invoke Hanlon's razor, which is don't attribute to malice what is better explained by incompetence and
Three of our
and
listeners will get that
mistake.
reference.
But probably 4.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if at this point it's really stretching credulity to believe that this is all just innocence. And it may not be. They have the pregame meeting, and it's probably not.
But the
It's
Bob
probably
Bowlesby
not.
phone
They have
call.
the Bob Bowlesby phone
It's
call.
probably not that.
But it could be that they are in their casual conversation said they're a member of this league. The officials are employees of this league.
Yep.
OU and Texas leaving hurts their employment.
Yep.
They could be pissed, and it could be that they very unintentionally are forming a bias against us. It was about a decade ago that through analysis they realized that baseball officials were acting with some degree of racial bias, completely unbeknownst to them, but there was a bias, and there's always been a bias that's detected in terms of home field versus away teams, where really in most sports 100% of the home field advantage is just the officiating that results. So I could see it. I in fact I will say I just believe there is a bias there.
I find
And
it
I believe we're seeing
interesting how someone who gets as much pressure as Benito does, and he hasn't been getting home on all these pressures.
is not getting held.
Never held.
Oh, yeah.
He's never held. How is Benito never called for being held?
Yeah.
We saw
With
one
as
play
much-
in the first half that there was 3 holds on a quarterback scramble.
Is it to the right? I think
Yeah.
it was to the right.
There was 3 holds on one
Our
play,
right there.
Our
and not
right,
a
yeah.
single one was called. And one was completely obvious because the jersey was stretched a foot and a half off the guy's back,
Yep.
and he's 10 feet from the head referee, who stands behind the offense,
Yep.
and not even a thought to throw a flag.
To me, the evidence is stacking up too strongly. I think there's always been a bias, and so it makes it easier for a new bias to intervene. If you look back statistically, that there's a big spread in number of calls against OU and for OU.
And we watch a lot of college football. I mean,
yeah. Well, I'm saying like
this could be homers like, oh, we're not getting
Sure.
the calls, but we watch a lot of college football.
And I'm looking at
For
the
a
full,
year,
the
for
full
20 plus
I'm looking at
years.
the actual stats, and like for the entire season, I remember it from it was 2019, I believe, and you saw the spread, and OU's at the top with the most calls against them, and they're at the bottom with the most calls in their favor, and you could see, and it makes. At least there's a narrative to support that, to say that the officials are thinking we're evening the playing field, even if they're not consciously thinking of that. They're giving the advantage to the lesser teams.
Yeah,
and
talent
if
for
you
talent.
if you looked at that top to the bottom in most calls to least calls, and then the reverse when it's in their favor, it very closely tracked the league in terms of best
first
to worst.
place through 10th.
And while there may be something to the fact that a really good team is partially good because they're aggressive and they're going to get a lot of penalties, I remember back in the day Florida State used to always lead the country in penalties.
Yeah, that's because they recruited a bunch of thugs.
That's probably true. Right. That was true. But even if that's true, there is a natural potential for bias to enter into the picture, and you have humans out there acting as officials who potentially are, without even knowing it, acting against, in this case, OU and Texas, maybe to a lesser degree. But Texas is easy to feel sorry for because, and one of my points was going to be, imagine if we were Texas fans. Imagine this podcast if we were Texas fans who just lost to Kansas yet again. Which you can say yet again because it's only been 2 out of the last 9 years.
And they're
But
4-6.
they should never lose to Kansas, and they're 4-6. They're not going to go to a bowl most likely because it's really hard to believe they're going to win their next 2 games.
Yeah, me and Jay had this conversation on the way back. So we all feel like ever since the SEC announcement, we've been hurt by officiating this year. What happens when we go to the SEC? How many years does it take us before we are, quote unquote, accepted as an SEC team?
I had a similar
Do we
thought.
have 4 years of dealing with refereeing issues in the
serious
SEC
thought about
before
that
we're
too.
actually
Yep.
accepted as an SEC
It could
team?
be.
Yeah, we'd have
I
to
don't know.
ask an A&M or Missouri fan.
I will not talk to an A&M fan.
That's true.
I won't do it.
You
Get
say
their
that's the
take on
fan,
it.
but it'd be interesting to get their take. The problem is that's just a homer's take, just like ours is a homer's take, no matter how we try to separate ourselves.
I
But
don't
I
talk
think
to
there's a big
cultists.
risk of this. I think
Yeah.
that's a very
Yeah, I think
very
so, too.
legitimate question. I worry about that because, and I guess you could look at it in terms of
Although Missouri, their first season in the SEC
First
went to
two.
the championship game.
Right.
Oh, first two.
Well, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean they can't go to the championship. It doesn't mean there's not bias against
Right.
them. In fact, it may be even worse. The next 4 years.
Well, we're
might
a
have
much
been
bigger
awful.
program than Missouri, so
Well-
they may be looking to stick it to us, quote unquote.
I don't think
when we first
I don't think
joined
it'd
the
be
league.
sticking to us. I think it would be you're an outsider. I think it would be it's just if there's a bias, and I think there's got to be a natural bias. That's why when you do non-conference games, you bring the opponent's refs with you
Right.
because you're worried about that
From their
homer
league,
bias. And so there's a natural homer. If there's a natural homer bias, it's going to be a long time before those officials see an OU logo or a Texas logo and think, "Oh, that's part of the family." To any degree that that's an issue.
I hope these referees enjoy the officiating of the Central Florida versus Kansas games that they're going to have for the next however many years the
I
Big
hope
12
they
is still a
don't.
conference.
I hope anybody that if there's anyone consciously making decisions like this, I wish unemployment.
Well,
for
their
them.
TV time's going down because the numbers of watching
Absolutely.
an OU versus OSU, OU versus Texas, the numbers that the officials are on the screen.
Which means the money in the league is going down,
Yep.
which means the prestige and the pay of
Yep.
these officials will go down, or at least not keep up with the others. And I'm glad for it. Anybody that's not doing their job well, I want them to be punished by the market. That's very frustrating to think that we may be a victim of some of that. And I think we are. And I think it was material in this game. I don't know.
I don't think
I
it
mean, we
changes
won
the
the rest
game.
of the games. I don't know if
I don't
it
know,
was
the 10 to
material
7
in any others.
pass interference could have been a pivotal.
It
Yeah.
truly
That
could have
one
been
could have been
pivotal.
pivotal.
I'm not saying we win the game. It wasn't like in Texas Tech. Did they win the game
Yeah.
that year? Yeah, they won the game
The
on
one
that
where
bad call.
they gave him a
Gave
first
him
down.
the touchdown.
There was one that gave him a first down.
Right. No,
that
I'm
he was
saying-
2 yards short.
No, I'm saying the touchdown where the guy is on the ground, picks the ball up off the ground, and moves it 6 inches over the goal line, and they give him a touchdown. And upon review, give him the touchdown to win the game. That was the
Or
game-winning
the Oregon
touchdown.
kickoff.
And the Oregon kickoff. So it's not up to that level. Obviously, we don't necessarily win the game if we get this one 15-yard penalty.
Right.
But it certainly helps us.
It changes the game.
It changes the game. So that's frustrating. That's when you're playing against both the refs and to one degree, and then the opposing team. One more thing about Baylor, and it's easy to pick on them because they're a Christian school. Anyone should be held to a high ethical, moral standard, but their behavior, one, is just ridiculous. That after the game they stormed the field. The fact that
It was a 4-point spread.
it's a 4-point spread.
We're number
only
8.
5 places
They're-
in front of
yeah,
them.
they're number 13, and you act like you just beat the 85 Bears or something.
That is
Yeah.
why leaving this conference is going to be so nice.
Now, if Kansas storms the field against Texas in Kansas,
Mhm.
that's understandable.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
but,
for sure.
Or if we lost to Kansas and they stormed
And
the
they stormed
field,
the field,
I'd
yeah.
totally be fine with it.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
But your team
Just like
that's
they
ranked,
stormed the film when they finally got a victory.
yeah,
at the
you're
start of
13th in the
season.
country. You're only a 4-point dog against OU.
It's embarrassing.
And you're going to storm the
It's
field.
embarrassing. And the other thing that's embarrassing, I know it's one player making a instantaneous decision, but it's a really bad one, and it may speak to the morality that you preach in your program. When he stepped on Caleb Williams' hand,
Yeah.
intentionally, it is very likely intentional double step on his hand. That's unsportsmanlike.
The
that's
first one
awful.
was probably like when he was just
An
coming.
accident.
Yeah, his
Accidents
right foot
happen.
stepped down, looked like an accident. He looks down and purposely steps his left foot
Well,
on his hand.
No one puts, when you're in the middle of a high action landing, running, no one ever puts both feet together.
Yeah.
That's a
Because then you're going to
prescription
fall
trip.
forward. Yeah.
It made no sense.
And how that's not reviewed, is that not a, I guess if
I
there
guess
wasn't a
it's not
penalty call, it's not
reviewable.
reviewable.
But it just, to me, speaks to, I mean, anyone can do it. We see our players do stuff, hit guys,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
shaking your head, but we're all shaking our head about it.
Yeah.
And we're not thinking, I don't know, it's not like we got a poll of Baylor fans to get their opinion on that, but it just speaks to something we've seen, thuggery that we've seen out of that program now for over a decade. That's really
They used to have the safety that got
Frustrating.
it targeting almost every game.
almost every game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we need
that
to also
dude's
talk
crazy.
about Gabe Burkich's play.
Yeah, so we worry that I worry that he may be injured, that he not finishing Texas Tech game and coming out but then again the kicking field goals is tough. One of them was a very long
The
field goal.
52-yarder was only
just,
he missed it by a foot and a half to the right.
Yeah, just to
That's
the
not
right.
bad.
Yeah, not
but
bad.
what about the opening kickoff for the second half? He
That
kicks
was
it out of
very
bounds.
frustrating.
Which that was in our end zone, and we were on that kind of the right hand side, and I wasn't sure it went out of bounds because it looked to me like it went over the pylon, and the ref that was standing closest went ahead and threw the flag.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that necessarily went out of bounds.
Yeah, I thought so too.
was
I thought it
close.
was close,
very close,
and it was very reactionary to the crowd.
Yeah.
The crowd was all over it, and of course we know most of that crowd cannot see to understand if it's. No, I mean just because where you're on in the stadium, you have no vantage point to know. Yeah, that was suspect. So I don't know. I worry about
it.
Berkeley.
Could be injury. It could be he doesn't like kicking off turf. That could
Turf
be a
could
thing.
be an issue. We talked about turf on the drive home.
I also want to. Yeah, I want to talk about that too. The slippage.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is an OU equipment issue, but especially in the first half.
Yeah, I don't know if
we
I
had
noticed it a lot in the
receivers falling
second.
down. I mean, 4 or 5 receivers coming out of the break fell down.
Yeah.
I saw 1 or 2 of the defensive backs fall down.
Yeah, you worry that it's an equipment mistake.
They just chose the wrong cleats,
Chose the wrong
maybe.
cleats.
But I did notice it for sure.
Yeah, I did
that we
too.
had some slippages on,
We talked about
especially in the first half.
We talked on the drive home about how in this rinky-dink conference of small stadiums, they also almost all have turf.
8 to 10.
8 out of 10 have turf,
Wow.
including Texas, by the way, which
Yeah.
is mind-boggling that you can't get grass to grow in Austin.
So we have grass.
we have
and who's the
natural
other?
gas,
TCU.
grass, and TCU.
TCU.
And I guess we play at the Cotton Bowl, which has natural grass.
If you're going to
If
count
you
that,
want to count it.
Yeah.
which
Oh, we do play there.
Yeah.
We don't have to play.
So
at
when
Texas
we
Center,
leave-
so.
I don't know if BYU probably doesn't, Cincinnati doesn't, Houston
does.
does,
I'm pretty sure.
and who's the other?
UCF.
UCF
does.
I'm surely does.
Yeah.
But anyway, it just speaks to this conference again that you've got so many teams playing on turf. I would imagine we're almost every team in the SEC has grass, and they all have bigger stadiums. It is really a good move for OU because we're getting out of a bad conference, and I think one thing that may help us, I think there's truth in the fact that you play down to the level of your competition, and our entire program may be playing down to the level of that competition over an entire season, which maybe supports the idea that when you go to the playoff and you play these other teams, you don't look so good. If we're having to play, and that's a point that a lot of people are
It could be that
derisively
way.
making
It could be that way all the
on
way
Twitter.
through even like secondary type staff
Absolutely.
members. I mean,
Absolutely.
how many medical people you have? How many
Oh, absolutely.
analysts do you have? How
and
many?
money helps all of that, and money's going to go up.
Right. So
And prestige. And so if you're thinking about taking a job, you may be taking a job at Mississippi thinking that's a leapfrog and a network to get into other jobs, that you're not going to take a job at Oklahoma because you feel like that's a dead end. Maybe a great dead end, but you know, all right, I'm the junior to the junior guy. I don't want this to be my career. I want to have the resume builder and the network effect that I get out of Mississippi, to pick on one. One of the points that people are making on Twitter today to be derisive to OU is that in Texas is that there's not Kansas in the SEC, and then everyone points to Vandy, and of course, then one guy made a funny joke, says South Carolina's over here saying hello, but
They just beat
in
Florida.
truth, that's true. In truth, you have a level of competition and a level of football play that is just at a higher plateau than it is in the Big 12. Size of stadium. Maybe the
Passion
football
of fan
intelligence of
bases.
but definitely the passion of the fan base. I mean, when you get people showing up for games year in and year out at South Carolina and these others, to the tune of the numbers that we see, it's just
I
phenomenal.
mean, we can
And they're
just
not
point.
that
We
good.
can just point out the fact that this was my first game at the new Baylor Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
I was 4-0 at Floyd Casey. I thought that stadium was fine, but they had the Bryles years. Robert
Mm-hmm.
Griffin. They really became a bigger time program. They've won 2 Big
Yep.
12 titles, but they built a brand new, beautiful stadium on the river.
Great
Facilities couldn't be nicer.
It's small.
45,000 people.
45,000.
45,000.
And they couldn't fill it up.
Yeah.
We bought tickets from Baylor.
We
from
bought
the
tickets from
university.
Baylor 12 hours before the game on our
Yeah.
drive down.
Yeah.
We bought tickets from the Baylor website
Yep.
to sit in the second. Well,
There
we were in a majority OU
ton
section.
of seats.
But
Ton of seats.
that just speaks to the fact of fan bases.
Yep.
You build a brand new, beautiful stadium, which, like I
Yep.
said, I love the awnings over the upper deck on the it's a horseshoe shaped.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
No, the facilities
But
are
you
great.
still build a 45,000 in this day and age.
At this day and age,
You're building a
in the
45,000
middle of a
seat
growing
stadium.
population of
Yes.
Waco, and you're right by Austin and Fort Worth and Dallas, that if your fan base, and I know it's a small school,
Yeah.
but if you're going to build a fan base, I mean, Notre Dame's not, it's much bigger, but it's not that big of a school compared to what they can fill up.
Yeah.
And because you have fans that go, you become fans of the program.
Right.
So if you're really looking as Baylor to become that next level of a program, they cannot expand that stadium except in that one end zone.
Yeah.
You
And-
could maybe add 20,000.
There was no jumbotron on the north end.
No, there's
which
only
was
one.
kind of strange. But like I said, you build a brand new stadium. You only build 45,000. You don't have a jumbotron
Yeah.
for the people that are sitting.
May prove to be intelligent over the as the future builds and fan attendance goes down, but it's small.
They also, while we were there, they brought these people out that had $100 million donation,
Yeah,
which that's a ton of money
that's a lot of money.
to build a basketball facility. I think it was, and something else maybe. But facility-wise, it's just crazy to me nowadays. You would build a stadium, brand new, beautiful, 45,000
with no ability to expand it.
Yeah.
basically. Jay,
Oh, I was going to bring up something that's been prevalent on all the different message boards for years now, and just wanted to get your guys' take on it. The whole strength and conditioning aspect. You have any feel for that? Do you think that
I do.
we're...
Do we take a step back from Jerry Schmidt?
Yes.
no, I don't think so. I think Jerry Schmidt was overrated.
From what I've read, I don't think so either.
I think that I'm not.
Well, what you see.
Okay.
Do you think
No.
our guys,
We
is
have-
it just because of their natural God-given abilities, we don't have team speed, or are we not training properly for team speed? Are offensive linemen not doing what they need to do in the weight room to get 4 or 5 yards on tough run plays? Are we not strong enough to shed blocks on the defensive line that we need to?
I think it's more technique than it is strength. I think it's what I don't understand about the question exactly is I think Jerry Schmidt was extremely overrated and a symbol of Bob Stoops' mistakes.
It's not really about Schmidt as much as
Well, no, I
could
know.
we improve
Could be
our
improved. So
strength
that's
and
a different question. So like with Jerry Schmidt, I think that he was a very old school strength and conditioning person who had old school theories that have been and are being disproven. That if you look evidentially at two things that are somewhat anecdotes, but parents of players did not like Jerry Schmidt.
Yep.
Lots of players, parents of players.
Players still comment on
And
Schmitty.
many players went to the NFL and got hurt after him. And
lot
so
of
I
players
think
got
he
hurt
wore
here,
people
too.
out.
Mhm.
I don't think so. I hold him in poor regard, but I think I'm not exactly going to endorse who we got going on now and what we're doing now as necessarily giving us the best strength
The
and
answer.
giving us the answer. Yeah.
But as we look back in hindsight, and we're all, crimson-colored glasses, were we tougher in the Jerry Schmidt era than we are in the Benny Wiley effort?
I don't think
as a-
that
I
is a
don't think so.
correlation at all.
I don't
You don't
But
think so?
I don't think
no, I'm not saying. No, I'm not saying I don't think so. I'm saying I don't think you can relate the two directly.
Yeah.
I think.
You found the
think-
wrong
I
cause.
don't know.
I think
you know who looks. They didn't play great last night, but overall, you know who looks like a hard, fast, mean defense? Texas A&M. Who's their strength and conditioning?
Yeah.
Maybe so. They've got a lot. I mean, the talent changed
Or just
over
in
that
general-
period and everything.
The majority of the SEC teams, even when you look at them, I mean, Arkansas, their players look.
It's nasty. We're missing
Yes,
the nastiness.
we have. Not only that, but just physically also. They look more physically aesthetic.
They
I
also
guess.
look more
I don't know if
talented,
it
though,
performs
in
on. I
areas.
don't know if
Yeah,
I
they
it.
think
look
a
more
lot of it is
talented.
technique as well. I mean, I think a lot is. I mean, and we can.
Our tackling is weird.
Yeah, we can speculate all we want. We're going to learn pretty quick when we join that
Yeah.
league whether or not there's a marginal gap between what we're putting.
And
on
it
the
may be
field.
technique, it may be talent, and it may be strength and conditioning, it may be all three. So I'm not at all going to endorse what we got right now. Most of what you see out of strength and conditioning people today is a lot of old school mentality and thinking and science that they're not catching up, and they're not willing to do the new thing. So an analogy or a similar situation is coaches still, even though they're getting better and better at it in the NFL, they don't go for it on fourth down as much as the absolute science says they should, and we've known this for 2 decades. Same thing in strength and conditioning. We're still doing crap like squats that are proven to be detrimental to your health and don't translate into things that help you play effective and good football. And we're wearing people out because they think that's what you need, and they think that you need to be punished by it. So I think there's definitely room for improvement there. But I would say, thinking about, I'm not going to say it's Jerry Schmidt, the Sooners of 1999 through early 2000s, the Knots, those were tough guys. I don't know what it was, if it was just Stoops bringing toughness or what, but those were tough.
Could also be
guys.
Those guys were 3 stars, and not the 4 or 5.
Yep.
Not necessarily baby their whole high school career, but either they're playing against less competition.
exactly what you're going to be doing, and,
right?
Yeah.
And you got to work.
You know you're not going to really have to. You know you're going to go have a spot.
Because, I mean, really, Baylor yesterday, they were bigger, faster, stronger.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't happen.
Many times. No, exactly.
Even though they're a good team, it's still Baylor.
Right.
And there's not very many people on the roster.
We know the recruiting. We know the
So
difference.
there's no reason for that.
I agree.
And so where does that come from?
That's more of the 3-star
practice?
thing, though. It may be that
Is that from coaching?
They're coming out. Probably some of that. I think they're also coming out with a chip on their shoulder, and there's something to be said about playing with a chip on your shoulder.
We're always going to get everybody's best shot.
We always get everybody's best shot, and we don't necessarily bring. We got to figure out a way to counter that.
Especially 11 o'clock games. We look like crap at 11 o'clock games.
Now I'm wishing we didn't get
this
the 11
whole
o'clock.
season.
I was thinking that would help us from the crowd standpoint. Now I'm thinking we need the 7 p.m. I don't know what the magic is.
Yeah, I'd like to look at the numbers
because
we are not 11 o'clock.
Let's look towards Iowa State. I think that's a
good
segue into
transition.
that.
Another 11 o'clock game.
Yep.
We are playing at 11 next Saturday.
Do we have are the lines out yet? The early line was OU by 8.5, but that was before the Baylor game.
Both teams lost.
I bet it's right around that.
Did you guys see that field goal?
62-yarder.
That was incredible.
That was incredible.
Monstrous.
And the play before, there was 7 or 8 seconds
8
left.
seconds on the clock.
And they ran a little 3-yard out route. And I'm like, why would you run a 3-yard
3 or
out
4
route?
yard
What are you doing to get 3 yards closer
Coach,
for a Hail Mary?
I can make 62. I can't make 65.
But I wasn't even thinking that. I was
he would
thinking
have
he
made
was
a
just,
67-yarder because that thing hit the back of the
I
wall.
thought it was just to make a slightly easier throw for the end zone.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, we thought Hail Mary was coming up, or maybe some kind of trick play or something.
Yeah.
And dude just booted it.
It was crazy.
I
So
don't think the line's out yet.
yeah, I don't think it's probably going to be out until they wait until the AP poll comes out. I think that's a formula in what
AP
they
comes
put
out
into it.
at 1.
Talk about that.
So where do we think we're going to be in the? Let's talk about the college football playoff poll. I don't know.
We have a quality
Where will
loss.
it be?
Do we move up?
Quality loss.
It's a joke, but it's
a
also
joke.
a serious question with the way this committee thinks. Where do we think we'll be? We were 8th. I will predict, thinking about the other teams who won, who lost. I think we'll be 11.
Yep.
And does Baylor jump us?
Nope. Baylor will be number 12.
Baylor's
They have
and
2
Baylor's
losses.
12.
Baylor will be number 12.
Yeah.
11-12.
Where do you think, Jay?
I hadn't even thought about it. It's just been too depressing. I don't know. I said, what was it, the midweek pod or last week?
You said we'd drop out of the rankings.
Yeah,
Did not say we would drop out of the
you
ranks.
said
I said we won't
20.
plummet.
20s or lower, you're
I
right.
said we'll plummet. I think there's a chance we plummet.
So
They did not think highly of us undefeated.
And that
I
is
don't
the
think
thing.
they didn't think
I
highly of us
agree.
with a loss.
I agree, but it wouldn't be consistent. It'd be consistent with how they've ranked us. It wouldn't be consistent with how they've ranked everyone else.
Yeah, but they're treating us differently.
Our SOS skyrocketed after yesterday.
Went way up. So if they're looking at it formulaically, they will have to put us at 11.
Which they claim that's what they do.
Uh-huh.
Well,
exactly.
we could move up then.
Honestly,
9-1 with a better strength and schedule. Well, shoot,
Honestly.
let's move these guys up.
Legitimately.
Legitimately.
No, I'm there with you.
Seriously.
Tech's got
problem
another
with the
win.
computer-based model, but
Kansas State's becoming a very good win.
Yeah.
Kansas win looks better.
Kansas win does look better.
Even though it's not a quality win because they don't
Not a
have
quality
league
win,
record.
but I mean, yeah. So strength of schedule is improving. I think 11th is my pick.
I think 11 is where we're going to be at.
I will say, so I meant to run this before. I looked back at that ESPN All-State Playoff Predictor, and they had not updated for the loss. But I did confirm that if you were to run the scenario that OU loses to Baylor, wins the Big 12 title, and wins the next 2 games after that, and then the Big 12 title, they gave it a 94% chance that we make the playoff. I don't know what it is now. I haven't run it to see now that they've actually got that and all the other teams in, if it actually changed that formulation.
So we actually have a question from a listener, and he wants to know, if we went out, do we deserve a spot in the playoff?
That was going to be my question. I love that question. So I think it's
Thank you,
it's
Brandon,
a joint
for that
question. Let's go, Brandon. So I wish he'd focus on foreign and domestic policy more, but yeah, if he wants to ask us questions and listen to podcasts, that's great. So I want to say, to the group, picking up on that theme, will we make the playoff, and do you want us to make the playoff, and should we make the playoff?
Yeah, do we
I think
deserve
that's all
to?
of his question and more. Lucas,
I don't think
Will
we're.
we?
I don't think we're a
Should
playoff
we?
caliber team.
And
Can
do
you
you
sweep
want
the
us to?
nose? Yeah, can you sweep
I have
the
thought
nose?
this whole season we're not a playoff caliber team. If we won every game and the Big 12 title, we obviously deserve to be in the playoff.
Okay.
But I don't think this team is playoff caliber,
Okay.
judging by all of the close games against not good teams.
So you
Out
would
of conference, in
say,
conference.
So you would say, if we win, back to the premise of
if we win the next two
win,
games, if we win the next 3 games, we may deserve, based on how everything shakes out,
Okay.
we might deserve to be in the
Deserve it.
playoff. But as a fan, we are not a playoff caliber team.
So you think we, in a
Do you
sense,
think?
deserve
Do you
it?
think we make it?
You think we? Yeah, that's. There's really 4 questions.
Do we deserve it? Do we,
We-
make it?
we can-
And do you want to
We
be
can
there?
deserve it, and then we can deserve it. So you're saying we very well might deserve it.
We might
just by
deserve it based on
rights.
how things shake out. If we're 12-1,
We may not
and-
be rightfully one of the top 4 teams, but we
Right.
still deserve it.
Yes,
And so you're saying basically you don't think we're one of the top 4 teams, right?
I do not think we are one of the top 4.
So you
teams.
don't think we deserve it. Do you want us to get in?
As the number 4 seed against an undefeated
We don't know
Georgia,
we don't know.
I do not want to be in the playoffs as the number
Okay.
4 seed against the number 1 Georgia.
You would be a 3?
I would take a 2 or 3 because I think that game. I think Georgia's the only really good college football team.
And things
this year.
can happen.
Everybody else is
So we could win a game.
very good or
Georgia
pretty
could
good.
get upset.
Georgia looks
or they could get beat up.
extremely good.
And so we go in. You're thinking most likely still we're going in a championship game if we get there against Georgia.
We'd be a 4 seed.
And no.
No.
If we were 2 or 3, we may, by luck,
If
or
we
by,
pulled an
by
undefeated
hook or by
Cincinnati,
crook, we
if we
might
pulled-
win, be
Yeah.
in the championship, and we may or may not even face Georgia. And there's a chance we could beat Georgia. Or so you're okay with this,
Yes.
okay? Connor?
If we win, I think 1, we deserve to be in the Final Four, in the Final 4 teams. 2, I want to be, because you always want to make the playoff, no matter what. You always want to be in that realm and in that conversation, regardless of what happens, in my opinion. Do I want to be there? Absolutely, I want to be there. I want to take my shot at the best of the best, because that is who we are as a team. We are one of the best teams in the country, despite what we want to say and what we've seen. We want to go back to this, all the talking blue chip team. We are a blue chip team. I want to be there. I think we should be there. Do I think we get put in if we win? I do not think we get put in the playoff.
Jay?
Wow.
That is where the pessimism of this podcast has come into my head.
Wow.
I always
You're
want to
welcome.
go as well. I'm not one of those people like,
Would you like
maybe
the cyanide
somebody in
now
this
or later?
somebody in this pod. I don't want to go to a lesser game just so we can get a win. I don't think that does anything. All the publicity from your team being in it and all the extra stuff that goes along with the playoffs and the other
That's a good
when you're
point.
out when you're recruiting and you're like, oh, been in the playoffs for 5 years. Who cares if you lose? Somebody loses. There's been great teams lately.
Well, 3 out of 4 lose every year.
Right. But there's been an elite team every year. And so maybe Georgia's that team this year, just like Alabama last year. 19 LSU was crazy. So I don't think these recruits and stuff care that you lose a playoff game to those teams. Those teams that went on to win are the best team in college football, obviously. So I don't think that does anything to win a
would
lesser
agree. I
game
would agree.
or get beat up in the playoffs.
You don't think national perception, like if when OU loses to Bama with Kyler, we lose to LSU with Hurts, and that Bama score ended up being closer. We were getting blown out in the
Absolutely.
first half,
We
but it ended
know.
up being closer.
And barely lose to
LSU
Georgia.
embarrassed us.
Right.
National, we lost to Clemson in a playoff.
Yep.
I mean,
yep.
the national perception has to leak into the thoughts of these committee members because
who's natural? But think about
down the road, if you look at
so
putting
you
an
want to
OU
lose in order to potentially win down the road. I don't get it. I don't think we're not going to get to the playoff 4 or 5 years from today because our national perception was poor
because we're
and we'd
0
be
and 5
better.
in the playoffs.
I don't. So you're.
I
I
think
don't think so. I don't think they're going to not put us in the playoff 4 years from today. Say.
I think the committee has proven
No,
that they
no,
look at
listen to
the
what I'm
helmet
saying.
logos,
No,
and
I
not
agree.
just the team
I
individually
agree,
year
and
to
I
year.
don't think that's going to hurt us because we're not going to be on the cusp of making the playoff 4 years from today, and they're going to look back and say, "Yeah, let's put them in because they
I'm
won
not
all
going to say
these
even 4
lesser
years.
bowl
I'm talking about
games."
next year.
Even that. And here's where I think the narrative really changes. When we're in the SEC, all that bullshit goes away because we're one more SEC team that made the playoff. And what holds us back is this rinky-dink league we're in right now. And we make it, and they say you can't win. If we are not winning and we're in the SEC getting in there, the narrative's totally
I
different.
think it hurts us
Nationally.
from like national football writers get tired of seeing us
Not
in there. Yeah, not recruits at all. I don't. Think
Oh yeah, people eat up the O in whatever OU playoff
Fans
statistic.
do.
They eat it
Writers
up,
do.
and yeah, the
Fiction
writers
writers.
do. Yeah, the writers, all that crap.
How's
But-
Notre Dame done the last 2 times they've been in the playoffs?
Exactly.
How did
Smoked.
Michigan State do when they
And
got
no
in?
one says anything
Smoked.
about them.
You know who else has been smoked several times? Ohio State.
How did Texas?
But they've
A&M
also
how
won
did
a
Texas
national
A&M do
championship.
when
Yeah,
they
but
made
that's
the
one.
playoff?
They
No,
got
wait,
smoked.
they've never
21
made the
years.
And they
playoff.
won one. Well, but we can't go back and rewrite history, but they did win one because they were playing in the game. We're not going to win one if we're not in the playoff. We have
gotta
to be in the
play the
playoff.
game
So you
to
got to play
win
the
it.
game. You need more trials. I get your point. There's two strong things, and this
Yeah,
is
I feel
definitely
better
midweek
as a fan.
pod.
And I get you're protecting
feel
yourself.
better
as a
You're
fan.
protecting
Yep.
yourself. I get it.
and it could
Not admirable, but I get it.
it could it could lead. You can understand an idea that it could lead to better things, and you're doing building blocks, and you're saying, I don't want to embarrass myself. I would rather be the guy that gets perceived as someone who got slighted, kind of how Georgia has gotten slighted, so to speak, or people perceive that, and now they get the leg up to get in.
I
There's some
sure
truth
feel a
to
lot
that.
better after blowing Florida out last season than I did after LSU
Yes,
embarrassing
but
us.
I always
you
go back to that's
personally
not the
felt better.
trade-off.
But this
That's not the
podcast is
trade-off.
from a personal perspective.
But
so
that's-
I'm sharing
no.
my personal perspective.
Your perspective can be that, but no one would disagree.
But it's wrong.
No, raise your hand if you would rather lose to LSU magnificently or beat Florida. No hands are up. That's not the trade-off. What we want to say is ex ante. Before you know the outcome, where would you rather be? And I would rather be in the playoff.
This is a poll question.
Did you
We
finish-
got to pull this up on Twitter.
We need to figure out a way to formulate it all, and then we need to figure out a way to get a midweek pod going where we really dive deep into this discussion. But finish. I don't think you finished, Jay, with your entirety of you think we.
Do you think we'll be?
Oh,
in
that's
it?
right.
Yeah, we'll be in it.
Wow. You know what? I don't think we'll be in it.
Steve, you said it really well a couple weeks ago when the initial rankings came out. The committee has done everything they could with who they've put in front of us to say we are not going to let a one-loss Oklahoma team in. And I understand the so-called formulas they're using and stuff have it working out, and I love that that isn't even a possibility to hold on to. But, and yeah, I know we're coming up on time here, but it is. You still have humans in that room who watch TV, listen to radio, and read articles.
I don't know if
And-
that's a reading group.
You're right. You're right. It may be a picture type of thing.
Uh-huh.
So I hope they're sending out illustrations when they're posting these articles. But at the same time, I think everything is set up to where it is. It doesn't matter what you did. You beat OSU twice. Clearly, OSU's not a good team because OU beat them twice.
Yep.
So I don't know. That is where I will let my negativity.
I think I'll
rear
agree
its
with
head
Connor
and
across the
keep
board.
it.
I think, and I definitely agree with Lucas, that if we win, it is most likely that I would say we deserve to be in. Now, it could be that you could change my mind with how it actually shapes out, and I'd say, no, clearly those teams performed better than us. Clearly they deserve, and we're the 5th or 6th team. But I think right now my expectation would be we do deserve to be in that scenario. I think that I would want us in. I definitely know I want us in. I want us in by hook or by crook no matter what. If we lose to OSU and still get in and win the Big 12 and somehow they let a 2-loss team in, I want us in.
My only caveat, kind of hedge my bet on this, would be I don't even know if it's possible. A Baylor rematch in
That
the
would
Big
be
12
so
championship
beautiful.
game, I think we would get in because it's one of those scenarios where
I'd agree with that.
We've
I'd agree.
been-
you
I agree.
eliminate
I
your
agree.
loss.
I agree.
And then that's a whole different story.
Great point.
It is possible.
So I'll say that's
I wish you has to lose next week.
my only disagreement with the way you originally laid it out, Connor, is that I'm a yes, except if we, when it comes to the question of will we get in, except to the exception, your point, Jay, if we avenge our loss, I think we would get in.
It's also barring, again, what happens in front of you. Who knows? Michigan State, Ohio
For
State,
sure.
Michigan State
All of
beat
this stuff.
each other, and Cincinnati loses.
You
and
could be the
all this
default.
stuff. Right, we're almost in by default, and we would deserve it as a
Yeah, yeah.
one-loss league champion for sure.
Yeah, it'd be 2019.
No one's arguing about the
essentially.
deserve.
It'd be
though.
2019.
We're only arguing about the will we get in. We're not arguing as much as just theorizing. But it's a shitty place to be. So it one.
Yeah, I would have
19 and we
preferred
went explicit.
If I was going to lose a regular season game the way it's looking,
Mm-hmm.
losing at night in Stillwater and being able to avenge that the next week would change the perception. That's probably the best case scenario of losing a game.
You can't get in with 2 losses.
No, but
way
now that
it's
we've
looking-
lost to
No,
Baylor,
he's saying if we only would have lost.
if we only would have
Oh,
lost
yeah.
one of these last 3 games, that would have been the one to lose at night. Their place, you
Yeah.
can sort of say, okay, that's a good, really good loss.
Right.
Come back, avenge that one. This Baylor loss would still be. It would still be good to avenge
know.
this one too, but not like that one would
We've
have been.
seen the freshness factor. We've seen
Yeah,
the
that's a
freshness
good
factor
point.
with the committee, where it's
They-
but you lost last week, and I'm really
No, I
still
think
thinking
that,
about that.
I think the freshness matters a lot to them,
So-
more so than it ever has in football. There used to be the conventional wisdom was you want to lose
The
early.
BCS formula.
The truth was you didn't. A guy from Ohio State did a deep study on that. He wrote a paper that was published, and it proved pretty strongly to robust results or robust testing that you actually wanted to lose late in the season, which actually you followed that formula,
Kansas
didn't
State
they?
to a T. Yeah.
So I think today, though, the freshness factor is a really important one, and they get that narrative going of this team's on a roll, they're winning. They just beat that Oklahoma State team twice, so I
That's
don't
true.
know.
By the time final rankings come out, if our loss was a month ago and everybody else gets their new loss,
Right.
there is something to be said for that.
So I don't know.
I mean, by the time we play Oklahoma State, they're going to be in the top 8.
Oklahoma State's gonna be the top 8 this week.
This week, I think, yeah, with who lost.
With us,
Well, let's just lay it on the table. Before someone starts accusing us of being just crazy homers, I think everyone would agree we could lose both of the next 2 games and
Oh,
not even
absolutely.
be in the championship.
Not even.
I think what you said earlier, 60% chance we beat Iowa, 40% chance we beat Oklahoma State. That sounds pretty reasonable to me.
Oh, we'll be dogs in Stillwater.
Yeah, we'll be dogs in
If Oklahoma
Stillwater.
State wins next week against Texas Tech, we will be dogs in Stillwater.
And
3.5 points.
those clowns will either rush the field or want to rush the field, even though they are beating a team they're supposed to beat.
That's about as good of a scenario for us as we could hope for, actually. I mean,
Which one? Losing and losing?
no. having
dogs.
Oklahoma State as the
favorite.
favorites and just
Absolutely. And
we don't
coming out
ever
winning.
get that chance to kind of
No.
ruin their season, and
I know.
I think
2011 was the last time we
our
had that
team would
chance,
be
and we
pretty
had
excited
fun.
to do that. I
Now
think.
we have actually had that chance, never to ruin their season where we weren't a contender, but every time we're both contenders, we win that game.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
then again, just about every time we play them, we win that game. I'd like to remind everyone that the dream
2-13,
scenario
I think.
beat them this year
Might be.
twice, and we have beaten them more than any other team has beaten another team in the history of college football. For our so-called rival. Let's hope that it happens. We've got Iowa State this week. I'll remind everyone that in 1975, a national championship OU team lost to Kansas. Kansas was every bit as bad. They might have been a little bit better than they are this year, but not by much. We also fumbled the ball like 8 times.
Quickly, what do you want to see out of this team next week?
Yeah, that's a good one. Let's end on that.
Simplification.
Simplification, effective production, moving the ball down the field on offense. I'll take just dial in the exact same defensive performance.
Yep.
I'm fine with that.
High percentage.
Not that much rushing, but it
offensive
changes
plays.
it. Yeah, being able to be productive and consistent on offense. What do you want to see, Lucas?
A victory. I don't care if it's another one of those.
I disagree. No, I
No,
agree. Definitely want a victory.
if it turns out to be like the Nebraska or the West Virginia or Tulane or Kansas State, and we're
I think it
pulling
absolutely is going to be.
If we're pulling it out in the last 5 minutes of the game, I will hate the stress the entire game. But if
But
we
you'll
get the
take the
victory,
win, baby.
I'll take the win.
Yeah, how much better do those wins feel compared to what we feel right now?
Yeah.
And after yesterday.
Well, Kansas felt like a loss for all of us that made that trip.
Yes.
That's the only one that felt like an almost loss. It didn't feel like a loss. Ask Texas what that feels like.
Oh,
But man, it felt bad. But this feels awful. The hangover the next day, we all agree, was worse than the drive home last
They need to
night.
I'm
shut
just
the
pissed.
bridges
I hope
down
the
in
team's pissed.
I hope they're pissed. I hope they know they're
I
pissed.
hope Bradley's pissed. I hope the coaches are pissed.
So
That's
to
all I
the
want to
people
see.
that come back and say you want us to lose because that's when we start playing good. God, maybe we do want to get in the time
you just
machine
said,
and
you
have
just said
us
it 1
lose to
week. You just said it
K-State.
1 week too late.
I
One
know.
game too late. Yeah.
Maybe we needed to lose to
Texas
to
Tech.
Tech.
No, maybe we need to lose to Kansas State.
No, it's a good win for us. That's the only
No.
thing boosting our
Quality win.
schedule right now.
No, because we would when we're rolling after that and we're winning by
That's a quality loss at that
by
point.
double
at this
digits,
point,
then it's
if
a
we-
quality
if we've,
loss.
yeah,
We didn't
lost
want
that
to
game.
lose, but anyway, that'll be what'll happen next week. We'll see if we end up doing a midweek pod. I don't know. We may be too down in the dumps to do one. But
I'll be a really
we'll see what
productive
happens.
employee at work this week. I know
Yeah.
that. So.
All right. Until next time. Boomer Sooner.
Boomer Sooner.